All right, you're on.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the open meeting for Thursday, December 17th, 2020, and ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, December 10th, 2020, and each has informed me there's no need to discuss those minutes.
Move we approve the minutes of Thursday, December 10th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there's no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 and 3, the suggested minute associated with agenda item 4, approving the proposal to open a rulemaking docket, accepting the statement of scope for submission to the governor's office, and directing commission staff to prepare and transmit the necessary documents to the governor's office, or the suggested minute associated with agenda item 5, accepting the proposed final decision in docket 9300 PLI 104 as the commission's final decision without modification.
Move we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 and 3.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. For docket agenda item 4, docket 1 AC 256, I move that we accept the statement of scope for submission to the governor's office and direct commission staff to prepare and transmit the necessary documents.
Yeah, I second. I'm really excited to see this move forward with our interconnection rule update. Looking forward to the input from the technical advisory committee and stakeholders and modernizing these. So an enthusiastic second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. And docket 5 or agenda item 5 and docket 9300 PLI 104, I move that we accept the proposed final decision without modification.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That takes us to agenda item 6, which is docket 5-EI-156. This is our investigation of electric vehicle policy and regulation. Back on September 3rd, we issued for public comment a draft order, which would have required large electric utilities to submit programs for our approval. We received a number of comments on that draft order, the majority of which expressed support for the order as a positive step in addressing EV considerations that were identified throughout the course of this investigation. But another thing that happened since we issued that draft order is that we've received a number of proposals for EV programs. And as of today, all of Wisconsin's major investor-owned utilities have either received approval of or filed for, or have some, in one case, a shareholder-funded EV program. And so in light of this, it would appear that it's no longer necessary to make these filings a requirement. However, commission staff then removed the language related to requiring the filing of these proposals and then modified, excuse me, some of the rest of the draft order, trying to strike a balance, I think, and I think they've done an excellent job, striking that balance of providing the regulatory clarity that we heard loud and clear that participants were looking for. So providing that as sort of a framework, but stopping short of making the actual requirement to file the proposals. There were some comments about whether it should be required to address equity and access of EV programs for low-income customers. There were a number of comments that addressed interoperability. And there were some comments related to cost causation and beneficiaries pay and how we will review those proposals if and when we receive more of them. So I went through, I read all of the comments that were submitted. I looked at the proposed changes that were made to that draft order. And I think staff, in particular, Joe Fontaine, I think he's done a remarkable job. And I did not have any additional modifications. I think it strikes the right balance. So for this one, I was at Alt 1, where I would issue the draft order with the proposed changes as was indicated in the red line. Commissioner Nowak.
Thank you. Yes, and I appreciate all the comments we've received from the different stakeholders since the draft order went out. As you recall, I didn't support putting out the draft order because I had several concerns with it. One of it being that there was a mandatory filing requirement. As you noted, that's been removed, which is a good thing. But I still have a lot of concerns about moving forward today with this. I don't think it's necessary to move forward, and I think there can be some unintended consequences if we do. I've struggled with this a bit because on the one hand, as you noted, we've received or will be approving or reviewing programs from the large investor-owned utilities, which cover a vast majority of the state population in the near future. So on the one hand, I go, so then what's the point of this, since we speak through our orders? And we have given some clarity in the orders we've approved and in the orders that we have rejected. And, had we not taken those actions, have we not spoken that way, I think that maybe some more clarity would be necessary right now. But I think that this then starts to go, then what is the point? And I don't want it to lead to unintended consequences. It can do harm. We are doing this, the point of when I voted to open the docket, the generic, almost 2 years ago now, the point was to have a discussion, in my mind, and we all approach a discussion about what the role of the PSC is and what we should be doing. And I've always felt it's a very limited role with respect to, how are the tariffs set up, cost causation principles must be adhered to, et cetera. We must stay in our lane. And I was really hoping too that we hear from the other policymakers and other agencies in the state about what their role should be. And we haven't. There's nothing in here from DOT. And we don't know how DOT is going to move forward and address the shortfall in the gas tax revenue if this were to move forward, continue and grow. There's nothing in here from DATCAP. There's nothing in here from the legislature on how they want us to treat this and how public charging stations should be treated. And I think that us moving in a isolation of all the other actors in the state that are key, I think, to the development of if EVs are going to go somewhere in this state, I think we have to do that with a better understanding of where they're at. And they haven't spoken. I don't know why. I mean, we can guess why, but there's a reason. And maybe it's because the state's it's just not a priority. I don't know. I don't want to, but we shouldn't move forward unless we know what the policymakers in this state want to do with the electric vehicles. I read all the comments as well. I was actually kind of stunned by some of the comments. One comment in particular that stood out for me from Citizens Utility Board, that, quote, while the pace and timing of this vehicle market transformation is unknown, CUB considers deep electrification of vast swaths of the vehicle market to essentially be a fait accompli. Less than 1% of the state's vehicles. That is not an accomplished fact. And I think, so there's no urgency for us to move forward today. I think we just need to have a better understanding of what our role is and what the other state, we cannot get ahead of ourselves. We cannot expand our authority. A lot of commenters here asked us to expand, I think, what our authority would be, and we should not take that up. It was ChargePoint's comments that brought up, I think it was the third party, the public ownership issue. If you look at that list, most of the actions that were taken that talked about the public charging stations were done by the legislature. And we need to hear from those other policymakers, I think, before we continue to move forward. This isn't going to, not doing an order today, obviously isn't going to stop utilities from coming forward with there's no downside to waiting to doing something to me. There's only upside. So I'm at alternative 3. I think we should not take action on it today. And I hope someday we do. I hope we continue. I hope we get more discussions statewide on this because, well, it's not a fait accompli. I think it is going to be moving forward and we need to do something. But let's do it. I think we have to do it in a more measured way and hear from the other actors on it. And then let's do it. Then that's the time.
Okay. Commissioner Huebner?
Great, thank you. You both mentioned all the comments. I wanted to thank all the 20 commenters who did provide information to us. I enjoyed reading every comment. I, like you, Commissioner Nowak, was very surprised by some of the comments that we saw from different actors. I'm fine today with moving this order into a framework, providing a framework and not requiring certain utilities to file residential EV programs. That's in no way a concession that the commission lacks the authority to require such filings. It's simply a reflection of timing and events that happened following the release of the draft order. In my view, any subsequent filings that would be made by utilities would be fully reviewed to make sure that the rates and the programs themselves are just and reasonable and in the public interest. My second point I wanted to make is beyond our action today, I think this docket should continue. There remain important items for which these stakeholders can continue to discuss and advance. One item that stuck out to me was raised by Mr. Noel from Eau Claire and the EV industry commenters, and that was how to design rates for public charging stations related to demand charges and energy rates. This is an area where I think we can learn from states that are ahead of us in this adoption curve. I'm sure there are other topics worthy of broader discussion as well, so I'm hopeful the docket continues to address those topics. I think both of you raised that many commenters brought up both sides of the coin related to EV investments and whether they should be allowed to be rate-based and costs spread to all customers, or whether those costs should only be borne by participants. Many utilities and commissions have allowed rate-based investments. For example, North Carolina just approved $25 million for Duke Energy last month, for example. Today, we're not making a blanket determination either way. The key to me will be utilities showing us how their individual programs can provide cost savings and benefits to all customers, or how a full EV build out would accomplish that, and how the programs they file are a necessary step to overcoming barriers in the market. And we'll make those determinations program by program at this point. And finally, you brought up, Commissioner Nowak, I saw from multiple commenters how 35 states have determined EV charging stations are not public utilities. Based on the comments, I did actually have some suggested edits to the final order. And Cindy, if you can send that around.
Stephanie will be sending that email, and then for those listening at home, as always, the handouts will appear shortly on the events calendar, lower right-hand side.
Okay, so I think Chair Vach, this will be up to you to review these and see if you're amenable to these changes. I'll walk through them. The first was that as we move away from requiring a residential program, I thought it would be helpful to recognize the various submarkets that were brought up by different commenters. And so I suggest that we add that on page 5, and that is related to identifying that distinct approaches may be beneficial to addressing equity and access across customers. Multifamily buildings and renters was brought up by a number of people, a number of commenters, low-income customers, medium and heavy-duty vehicles for private fleets and public fleets, including public transit, and then finally, public charging or level 3 DC fast charging. My thought with this one was just to give the utilities different ideas of submarkets they could be addressing with these pilots. Since we got that great information through the comments, I thought it would be helpful to include that. The second sort of larger policy question was on interoperability. And a lot of commenters made this point that interoperability, there is the plugs that you can plug into the different cars, but then there's also communication protocols and other aspects to interoperability, not just related to public charging. And so I had an edit on item 3K that's on, I think, page 9 or the bottom of page 8 that would essentially ask any utilities filing to address interoperability for any of their pilots. And then I had a couple of minor edits as well. Back up on page 5, the order would read that it addresses the priorities, and I was going to add the words "many of the priorities," recognizing that not all of the priorities are addressed here, but many of them are. And then finally, a minor change on page 7 was it talked about including plans for other submarkets, and I thought we should just change the word "include" to "file," recognizing that may not happen all at the same time, that over months and years to come, a utility may identify a need and file that separately. So that's just kind of a cleanup item. So those were the 4 edits that I had, and I guess back to you, Chair Vach.
Okay. I don't have any concerns with your edits. So I guess that would put me at Alt 2. So I would issue the draft order as proposed, accepting your modifications, Commissioner Huebner.
Great, and I'm at the same spot.
If I may, I just want to
Please
make a comment on that because there was a follow-up to something I also wanted to bring. I think we need to be careful, as this is obviously going to move forward, about being more prescriptive in what's going to move forward here, because again, to me, this is starting to go down a road that is further beyond our scope of authority. This is close to rulemaking if we start. I know it's not mandatory, but I think we need to be careful moving forward of getting into the minutia of things and prescribing things that we want to see. Cost causation is something is within our wheelhouse. Interoperability of electric chargers, I think, is something that is beyond what is necessary for us to do here, and it's too prescriptive. I think we need to be very careful moving forward about what our authority is to continue to do this type of stuff. And just more, again, holistically stepping back, where does the state want to go? I don't think it's up to the 3 of us to decide that. It's to a lot of different groups, and it's not just to the commenters here. We need to hear from more people. So I'll still be at alternative 3 with that.
Okay. We'll have a motion.
Great, I move in docket 5, EI 156, that we issue the draft order as proposed with the modifications as we discussed today.
I will second. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Okay. That concludes our business for our open session. Right now, we're going to move into a closed session under Wisconsin Statute 19.85. Sub 1, Sub G, to discuss litigation matters with legal counsel.
I will move that we recess the open meeting, go into closed pursuant to 1985 Sub 2, and then we will reconvene the open meeting. I'm sorry, pursuant to 1G, and then reconvene pursuant to 1985 Sub 2 as noticed in the public meeting for today to discuss agenda item 7.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.